All praises, glory, and honor, Yasharel, giving glory and honor to Yahusha Hamashiach, our Lord, our Savior, and our kinsman Redeemer, thanking him for that precious, efficacious blood that he shed on Calvary. Also, we thank him for that lynching that he suffered at the hands of a mob. And we're going to get immediately right into this study that we are doing today, where we are talking about part 3. This is the lynching of Yahusha. The lynching of Yahusha. We are going to be reading from the book Into Egypt Again with Ships with Elijah J. Israel. You know, if you follow me on this channel, I will always be implementing and doing a lot of reading, because at one time we were not able to read. And now that we are blessed people able to read, you have to read to get knowledge, because knowledge is power and everything has been hidden from us in a book. So we're going to immediately go into this study here, where we're going to prove that Yahusha is our kinsman redeemer, because kinsman redeemer mean one who associates with us. He knows what it feels like to be empathetic, to go through the trials and the tribulations that we have as a melanated people, the diaspora that has been spread across the four corners of the earth and scattered. The lynchings that we have gone through, the trials and the tribulations, all kind of pain and suffering. He is our kinsman redeemer because he associates with us. I want you to see this picture of the great God of heaven, the great God of glory, coming down and wrapping himself in human flesh, taking upon him the likeness of sinful man, being a melanated man, coming from the tribe of Judah, the Lion and the Lamb of Judah, and he associated with the people who were looked upon as the scum of the earth, and not even loved by his own people, his own creation. So immediately we're going to start on chapter 3, a people cursed by God, where I have to set a backdrop and a premise and build a foundation first before we get into the lynching of Yahusha. We have to first of all see that we are a cursed people by God. If you ever are going to find out who are the true Israelites of the Bible, you are going to have to look at Deuteronomy chapter 28, where it talks about the blessings of obedience and the curses for those people who do not follow the Torah, the laws and the commandments and the statutes of Yahuwah. So let's begin reading here, chapter 3, a people cursed by God. And I'm going to have to move the camera around a little bit so you can see angles of the book that I'm reading from. So excuse me for moving the camera here and there, but I'll have to make adjustments as necessary. Chapter 3, a people cursed by God. It is no mere coincidence that the black experience in America has been one of tremendous suffering. There are, in fact, spiritual implications regarding the deplorable condition that blacks have suffered and continue to suffer today. In order to understand the state of black America, one must consider what the prophets tell us concerning Israel's future state of calamity. After Israel's liberation from bondage in Egypt, God promised that impending curses would be the consequences for disobeying his laws, statutes, and commandments. These curses describe atrocities that the Israelites would face. Some of these atrocities include the loss of land, enslavement throughout the world, the adoption of false religious practices of their captors, and the loss of recognition as God's chosen would be forgotten, not only by nations of the world, but also by the Israelites themselves. And just like Yahuwah told us in the book of Deuteronomy that we're going to go into Egypt again with ships. And when we get there to Egypt, we are going to serve gods of wood and gods of stone, meaning we are going to get into this Christianity, this pagan cross, this pagan symbol that people wear around their necks, which Christ did not die upon a cross. He did not die that way. He died upon a stauros. He died upon a stake. He died upon upon a pole. And it's amazing to me today that people walk around with this cross around their neck saying that this is for the person I love, representing his death. That's like saying your son or your daughter was killed, in so many words, and you're wearing a gun. They were shot to death, and you wear a gun on your neck as a necklace, as a emblem to pay homage to someone that you love. So this cross is a pagan symbol. So as we see here, the scripture tells us that when we get into the land of our captivity, we would be blind until the time of the Gentiles are coming to a fulfillment. Then God would open up the eyes of Yasharel, the eyes of his people, to the heritage and the truth of who they are from the other nations of the world, cutting us off, trying to do away with us. So it says here that today we see the so-called African American who has no land, who is the product of slavery, who has wholly adopted the pagan customs of his former slave masters, and neither he nor others can speak specifically of his origins. We don't even know who we are as a people. All we know is that these people came and got us, and 1619 came and brought us over here on these ships, and we have adopted to this false pagan Christianity. And know this, brothers and sisters, whenever I speak of Christianity, I'm not speaking of Christianity in the way that it was in the book of Acts when they were first called Christians, I believe, here at Antioch, because to be called a Christian was ridicule. It was mockery. It was to be laughed at. It was not a term of endearment as we call it today. But when I speak of Christianity, I'm speaking of what Constantine created, where he mixed Roman paganism also with Christianity. And you have this false fake religion now that has all kind of pagan origins in it. That is the Christianity I speak of today, where our preachers, pastors, and teachers walk around with these big crosses on their neck, because all religions have come out of Catholicism. Catholicism means universal. So all of these churches, Protestant churches, they come out of Catholicism. Let's go back to our reading. Biblical prophecy is irrefutable evidence that the African Americans are the descendants of the ancient Israelites. All right. This truth is evidence by comparison of those curses and the lamentable conditions foretold in prophecy to what has happened and continues to happen to African Americans today. As we progress through this chapter, the striking parallels will become even more evident. These parallels also reveal that it is impossible for any people beside the so-called African Americans and other blacks enslaved throughout the world to be the true Israelites. We are going to prove, as we do this study, this third-part series, the lynching of Yahusha, that we are the chosen people of the world, and that Yahusha was also lynched as we were, because he associates with the diaspora. He associates with the 12 tribes that has been scattered throughout the world to the four corners of the earth. And he knows the pain and the atrocities that we have went through. So it says here, this claim is proved by systematically analyzing the following. Number one, the sign that denotes the accursed of God. And number two, a comparison of biblical prophecies that describe the condition of the Israelites with historical and contemporary references which depict the African American condition. Babe, can you please let Corey out? He's walking around the house is worrying me. I'm sorry, family. I got my Yorkie walking around the house, and he just walks in circles and circles. Seem like he's anxious and on eggshells. He's walking All right, here. So we'll pick up. It says, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. So this is where we get into the curses. Cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. God's people are going to have a curse upon them. And this curse is going to be by hanging on a tree. No other group of people have hung on trees like the melanated people, the African American people, the black race, melanated people. We are the only people in the millions that have been lynched upon trees. So therefore, in order to know who the chosen people of God are, you are going to have to follow those curses that are prescribed for those people. When you look at what is the so-called Jewish people, the Ashkenazi Jews that are living in Israel today, are they a cursed people? Have they hung on trees, been lynched on trees in the millions as we have as a melanated people? No, they have not. And we will find that out more the more we get into this study. The Holy Bible speaks of a sign that indicates the accursed of God. So this is a sign that will follow God's people that are cursed, is the sign of hanging on a tree. And the Bible has many scriptures in it that proves God's people would hang on trees. And also as we find out that Yahusha was lynched on a tree. Yahusha, he was lynched on a tree just as well. Okay, so it says here, the Holy Bible speaks of a sign that indicates the accursed of God. Deuteronomy 21 reads, he that is hanged on a tree is the accursed of God. To be hanged on a tree, regardless of whether the tree is in the shape of a crucifix or has a rope dangling from one of its branches, is a sign of being cursed by God. Now we see Yahusha did not have a rope around his neck, but he was lynched. When we talk about the word lynch, lynch means to be put to death, especially by hanging or by a mob action without legal authority. What happened to Yahusha? He was put to death by an angry, radical mob. He was put to death by these Roman soldiers. He was put to death by his own people that denied him, an angry lynching mob. And they did not give him just due process, which means they did not give him a fair trial. They did his trial in the wee hours of the morning. They did him wrong, unjustly wrong. To be lynched means, number two, a public killing of an individual who has not received any due process, the legal system to be proven guilty. Now, Yahusha was hung on a tree in public. He was ridiculed. He was mocked. He was spit upon. They yanked and pulled his beard out. They took a crown of thorns and smashed them into his head, into his skull. So we will see here that to be hanged on a tree, regardless of whether the tree is in the shape of a crucifix or has a rope. Now we know here that we're always hearing about the crucifixion of Hamashiach. But really what you have here, this tree was a stake, was a pole in the ground that was called a stauros. It was not a cross. The cross is a pagan Roman symbol that was used, and it is a sign of fertility. It was not a cross with the wooden arms stretched out like that. Yahusha died by being lynched upon a tree with his hands above his head and 1 foot upon another. Those nails were driven through his wrist. The Romans considered the hand to be the wrist to be part of the hand because the weight of his body could not be supported by those nails here as they show in most paintings. So those nails were placed here in his wrist. That is what held his weight up. And as they pierced his feet with those nails, there was a piece of wood under his feet that upheld his weight. And it is said that Yahusha died by asphyxiation, by not being able to breathe. That is why when the Roman soldier pierced him in the side, he released blood and water. And it is by that blood and that precious water that we are saved, we are redeemed, we are delivered and set free. All praises and glory to the Most High for that precious, efficacious blood. That is why every time I start off on this channel unveiling truth, I always give him praise, glory, and honor for that precious blood. It couldn't be anybody's blood that redeemed us, Yasharel. It couldn't be the blood of a lamb or of a goat or of a turtle dove or any other man could not have done this. It had to be the Hamashiach. It had to be the Mashiach, the Christ, the anointed one. It had to be Emmanuel, God manifest in flesh, coming down from glory, wrapping himself in human flesh to associate with us on our level. I don't know if you guys can really grasp this or understand this, but your God from on high came out of glory. The Word was made flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. In the beginning, when God said, "Let there be," that was the Logos. Yahusha was in the form of the Word. Everything was created by him, and without him was not anything made. When Yahuwah said, "Let there be light," that was Yahusha. When Yahuwah said, "Let the waters bring forth an abundance of creatures," that was Yahusha. When Yahuwah set the firmament, when he set everything in creation, he created light, he created darkness, he created the grass, the trees, the animals, everything he did and he spoke by the word, that was Yahusha. Yahusha formed everything. So when we speak of Yahusha in the book of Bereshit or in the book of Genesis, in the book of beginnings, we speak of Yahusha as the Word. He was the Logos. He was the Word made flesh. So those words that Yahuwah spoke was Yahusha. So we see here, for example, as it says, Jesus, Yahusha, took upon himself the curse of man and died on a tree. He assimilated, he associated with his melanated people. He already knew through the telescope of time that we, as the scattered 12 tribes of Israel, the diaspora, that we were going to be hung and lynched on trees. So he himself came and suffered the exact same death, and the mockery, the ridicule, the shame, the embarrassment. I'm telling you, you guys better hang with me throughout this series in this video, because this video is going to be fire. Once we get into the lynchings, see what's taking place right now with this critical race theory is they are whitewashing our history. Our children don't know nothing about this. They don't have a clue on these lynchings that took place, or the term or the word nigger, how they use the word today. And I thank God for my cousin, Pastor Kelly, how he began to break down that word nigger and niggas in his series that he is doing on We Woke Now channel, how that was a word that was good for us as a people. That was a word that described us as a nation. You know, I was doing some reading in the book of Acts where it talks about certain disciples went to what was called nigger Niger. But because we use that word in such a defaming way and such a evil way, it's kind of bad when you say the word nigger. But you know, that word nigger was really good because it described a race of people, an ethnicity, a nationality of people. But we allowed Esau to take that word and change it into a bad word and to demean that word and make it say something that it is not. The same way Dr. Martin Luther King say, today we're going to get the language right. Somebody took the word black and made that a very bad word. You look in the dictionary, black is a very bad word. Black can mean filthy. Black can mean dirty. But someone took that word white and they made it as clean. They made it as pure. They made it as holy. But Dr. Martin Luther King said, we're going to get that language right today. We're going to get that speech right today. We're going to put this speech in perspective. Nigger was never a bad word to begin with from the get-go. No, it was not. But Esau took that word and he turned it. You got to learn something. Every time Esau says something, you got to switch it. You got to change it. Everything he says, don't take it at face value, switch it. If he says it's going to be cold outside, just know it's going to be hot outside. Whatever he says, it is the opposite of it. That's the way Esau speaks. So he takes everything that was good towards us and he twists it for him to make it seem bad for us and good for him. So it says, for example, Jesus took upon himself the curse of man and died on a tree. I just can't leave that and get off of that because I'm trying to get you all to see. Yahusha felt our infirmities. He is our high priest, not the churches, not the world's. He is Israel's high priest. The new covenant, as we call it, the renewing of the covenant, was made with Yasharel. He made that covenant with Yasharel. The old covenant was made with Yasharel, and the renewing of that covenant was made with Yasharel. So in this covenant, he took the curses upon himself and he died upon a tree, just as our race of people have been lynched and hung upon trees. As it reads here, I'm going to give you first from the Sefer Bible. We're going to read, and I'm going to start off where the first mention of hanging on a tree takes place here. Before we get into this other reading that I have to read, let me bring this down here some. It says in the book of Deuteronomy in the Sefer, chapter 21, verse 22. And if a man has committed a sin worthy of death, and he be put to death, and you hang him on a tree, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree. This is why Yahusha could not remain upon the tree all night long when they lynched him. They had to take him down before the sun began to set. His body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but you shall in any wise way bury him that day. For he that is hanged is accursed of Elohim, that your land be not defiled, which Yahuwah Eloheka gives you for an inheritance. Yahuwah your God, that he gives you for an inheritance. To leave that body upon the tree all night long was to defile that inheritance, that land that Yahuwah their God had given them. So we see here that is the premise for hanging a man upon a tree, that you could not leave his body on that tree to remain there all night. And it says that Christ here hath redeemed us from the curse of the law. Yasharel has been redeemed us. Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law, being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. All right. Now we're going to get into the meat of this. So we see cursed is everyone that hangeth on a tree. The black race, the melanated race, the African American race, whichever way you want to call it, they have been a curse of God because they have hung on trees, because we have been lynched, because we did not obey Torah. All right. So it says here, during the Roman siege of Jerusalem, 66 to 70 AD, the sign of God's curse was upon the nation of Israel. Let me bring this out. The Romans constructed a wall around the city and crucified anyone found trying to escape. Now you have to understand something about these Romans. These Romans perfected what was known back in times past, even of the Egyptians. When they knew about crucifixion, they taught this to the Romans, and the Romans perfected this crucifixion. I don't know if everyone knows what was involved with a crucifixion, but as we go on more, we're going to detail the lynching and the crucifixion of Yahusha. It says the Romans constructed a wall around the city. These Edomites, they constructed a wall around the city and they crucified anyone found trying to escape. During this siege, the Romans showed no mercy in crucifying as many as 500 Jews a day. The crucifix was the sign of the curse of God upon Israel. And just as Israelites were hanged on trees in the siege, they have been hanged on trees throughout America's backdrop. So if the accursed of God truly are hanged on trees, are not the so-called African Americans also accursed? African Americans have been hanged by the thousands in the United States. Between 1882 and 1968, the Tuskegee Institute recorded 4,743 lynchings in the United States. Now, I want you to know, brothers and sisters, those are just numbers, Yasharel, that were recorded. There were many lynchings that were not recorded. Lynchings were up into the millions. These are just recorded lynchings. That is why here just recently, President Biden made an anti-lynching bill that made no sense whatsoever. After taking all of these years, I believe it was 67 years now, 67 to 122 years, somebody said, why all of a sudden make an anti-lynching bill now? The lynching days are almost over. In the days that they were doing the lynching here in the 19th and the 20th century, when they were doing these lynchings down south, they repealed these bills. 200 times these bills were repealed by law because they did not want to go against lynching. It was nothing for an angry group of mad white people, of Europeans, to come into a black person's house and just yank them out of bed at night for any time they felt that you looked at a white Edomite woman or something like that. And that we're going to get into Emmett Till. Stay with me. We're going to talk about Emmett Till more and show pictures of what his mutilated but battered body went through. Because back then, the thing was they did not want a black man to get with a white woman. They did not want integration. They wanted to keep them separate. And it wasn't so much the black man looking at the white woman. These white women wanted these brothers. When these brothers was working out in the field with their shirts off and their skin, that melanated skin glistening in the sun of the day, the heat of the day, the sweat running from the top of their forehead down their biceps and their bodies. And when those white women saw them in the windows, they were the ones lusting after the brothers. It wasn't that So the white man, the Edomites, the slave masters were scared because they did not want an intermixing. At the same time, the white slave masters did not want the black slaves or the brothers getting with the white women. These same white slave masters were raping our women, the black women, and also buck breaking the men. Boy, I tell you what, this is deep and this is going to get real good the more we get into this. I'm going to pull out some books. There's another book I got coming that I'm going to read that is dealing with the whites eating us, the delectable Negro. That book is called The Delectable Negro, where it talks about homoeroticism, where it talks about the buck breaking. See, a lot of this, our history is being whitewashed. And if we that are in my age group and older, if we don't pass down this teaching to our children, they will never know what we endured during this time in our history, our ancestors, our forefathers. They won't understand what we went through. They don't even know what buck breaking was. But these slave masters, this is where you get this homosexuality from. This was this homoeroticism that the white slave master had, that after he raped the black sisters, he came and he raped the man too. And he buck broke him in front of his family, in front of his wife, in front of the boys, the girls, and the children, to put fear into the hearts of his children. You better not ever leave or run from this slave plantation. You better stay right here. You guys better understand the story of Willie Lynch, the Willie Lynch letter. You better understand what was put into our system, what took years to undermine the black race, to put into us all of these laws that they put into us, the Willie Lynch laws, the Jim Crow era. Is going to take years to revolutionize and revitalize and transform our minds of what was placed down within us, that slave mentality. And it's not going to happen overnight. It is going to take a generation to break these laws. All right. As we get into this a little bit more. All right. Let me see where I left off at. The crucifix was the sign of the curse of God upon Israel. And just as Israelites were hanged on trees in the siege, they have been hanged on trees throughout America's backdrop. So if the accursed of God truly are hanged on trees, are not the so-called African Americans also accursed? All right, we got into that. During this lynching century, the hearts of many African Americans trembled as they lived in fear of being lynched. However, this omnipresent terror and sadism cannot be conveyed by mere statistics, okay? So, like I said, our brothers and sisters down south, they dealt with this fear. To put fear into the hearts of our people. It was nothing to go to kick open a door, beat on the door, walk into a black man's house and snatch his wife. So wait till you hear some of these stories I got to read to you. Snatch his wife, snatch the man, snatch the children, the boy, the girl out of bed and just lynch them, mutilate them, castrate them, use their body as a shooting target practice. This was just years ago, a couple years back. It hasn't even been long, brothers and sisters. This is in our era. This is in our day and time. But this is what Yasharel, this is what the 12 tribes of Judah had to go through because our disobedience to Torah. It says, one of the most poignant personal accounts of lynching in America was written by James Cameron, a lynch mob survivor. Cameron writes in his book, A Time of Terror, of the pervasive terrorism blacks face. In this chilling memoir, he recalls that even as a young teen, he was fully aware of the savagery involved in lynching. In gory detail. See, I'm going to give you the gory details of what took place with the crucifixion. You guys everybody want to think, oh, it just got a couple of nails in the hands and it was this, it was that. And then all of the lynchings, they just put a noose around your neck. They just hung you up and hung you in a tree. No. It was more than that. This was public humiliation, and I'm going to break it down, and I'm not going to leave no stone unturned. And you might have to watch it if you got children in the room, because I'm going to go into some very gory details on either this video or the next video coming up dealing with lynchings in America and what they want you to forget. They want you to forget this, what happened in America, and don't tell your children about it, but you got to pass this history down. It says, in gory detail, he describes the castration of black men. I want you all to know something, Yasharel. When we get into lynching, lynching was not only about taking that rope and putting it around your neck and hanging you up in a tree. We have been envied as the black man so much here in America. You guys know they already hate us for our melanated skin. But when they had these lynchings would draw crowds. They would publicize this. This would draw crowds of thousands upon thousands of people to see a black man, a black woman, a black little boy, a black little girl with a noose around their neck. But before they lynched them, they did what they did to Yahusha. Yahusha went through a passion. He went through a scourging. He went through a time of mockery and beating. They took our brothers and our sisters before they lynched them. They stripped them naked. They beat them. They mutilated them. They took knives to them. In one story I read, they cut out a brother's heart. It was nothing to take a knife and to gut the entrails, to gut the intestines out of a person, to take their eyes out, to cut their tongue out, to pull their teeth out, to cut their ears off, to cut their hands off, to cut the black man's phallus off, his genitals. They did that with no problem, because the black man has always been the white man's intimidation, even in that area of the phallus. They took what was the most prized possession and they cut it off. That was given, the phallus was given as souvenirs to children, to family members. They took that as a prized possession to cut the black man's phallus off. The white man has always worshiped the black man's phallus. All right? I'm just being real with you here. I'm leaving no stones unturned, because when I get to this book, The Delectable Negro, I'm going to show you the cannibalism and how they ate us. They wanted to beat us so much. My brother JB been on his channel, JB Zion, talking about Get Out. And Get Out, you see where they take this black young man that comes to this white couple's house, and how they take black people down through the years and they begin to take parts of us. They began to take our brain, our memory, and parts of us and implant them into their families, into the whites. And this is what they're doing with our melanin. They want to be us so bad that they take our melanated skin. They tan like us. They get injections in their lips, their noses, their buttocks, like the sisters to look like us. Kardashians ain't never had nothing. This came from us. But see, they're trying to be like us. I'm going to break it down in this book of The Delectable Negro. So they consumed us. They ate us. After these lynchings, they would put gasoline on the bodies and burn the black bodies up, and they would eat us. It was a feast. What you called a picnic was called pickaninny. Pick a nigger. That's what it was. You took those families came out in droves in the thousands, and they took that little red and white picnic blanket out, set it on the grass. The children would get a day out of school. Either they could have an excuse to come to school late, so all the families and everybody around there in that area could come watch a public hanging and castration, mutilation of a black man, woman, boy, and child. And after they were done, mutilating them with the knife, cutting off body parts, doing whatever they needed to do. Then they would put gasoline on the body and burn it, and they would roast it. They would feast off of their body. This is nothing new, but you haven't been told this in your history class. This you don't know about. In the annals of history, this hasn't been discussed. The buck breaking, the homoeroticism, all of that has not been discussed. Cannibalism, all you know about is the lynching, but the gory details of it, them eating us, you didn't know about that part. You didn't know about the mutilation. You didn't know about the castration. See, when a man was castrated and that rope hung around his neck, you would have to go into detail of being lynched. That blood would swell up in his body. They would strip you naked, so you would be made ashamed. You would be laughed at. They would publicly humiliate you like they did Christ. As I began to read and study, it is said that the Romans did their best in perfecting the crucifixion, where they would strip you naked. It is said that the Romans, they mastered that. They would pull your clothes off. So it is very possible Yahusha did not even have clothes on when he was lynched or crucified, because they wanted you to feel embarrassed and shame. And even on the paintings and the pictures we have today, it's kind of considerate. They take a little loin cloth and they put it around the private genital area. But there is laws that states if a man was going to be stoned, that they couldn't stone him naked. He had to have a loin cloth. It was called to cover up his private parts. But because the Romans did not adhere to the Jewish laws, what did they care about a man having a loincloth covering his private parts? Because they perfected humiliation. So it is very possible Christ, Yahushua HaMashiach, could have been on that tree hanging there naked, being a public display of humiliation. And this is what they did. They tried to humiliate you. And then they would burn you and they would eat you. The family would sit there and they would eat you. And they would go out in the neighborhood throwing body parts. They would especially go in black neighborhoods. As time began to get into the 20th century, they would take body parts of the lynched person and throw them on the porch. Whether it be the head, whether it be the arm, whether it be the leg, whether it be the phallus, whatever it was, tongue, ear, teeth, and they would throw it through the neighborhood. His body parts spread everywhere. What kind of people are these? You guys would say, these are the serpent people. These are the seed of Satan. Just like Yahusha has his people, Satan has a remnant. Boy, I tell you what, this is getting so good here, because I'm going to show you all where it talks about a third. We got a lot going on with a third. 2/3 of Israel is going to be destroyed. A third of Israel is going to be saved. 2/3, when they came and got us off of the West Africa coast of Negro land and brought us, it is said that 2/3 of our people died. And only a third of us survived in the millions that they brought. There's a something synonymous with that 2/3. 2/3 of all the people that they brought over on slave ships either died at sea or were lynched and killed, and only a third of them survived coming to the Americas down through the years when they brought us here in droves, in thousands, in the millions. So that's what I'm trying to get you to see. 2/3 of our people died in slavery. And the Bible foretells you that when Yahusha returns to get his people, 2/3 of Yasharel is going to be destroyed. And only a third is going to be saved. I want you to look at that number. There's a comparison there. Let me read on, try to finish this up, because there's so much in this. I'm going to have to get another video out, because you guys see I'm very passionate about our history, because it has been hidden. And Martin Luther King said, if a man does not know his history, he is liable to repeat it. So it says here, in gory detail, he describes the castration of black men fastened to trees and used as target practice by their assailers. It says, Ida B. Wells, an outspoken, fearless voice against the practice of lynching, writes on the practice in one of her numerous reports. 8 Negroes lynched since last issue of the Free Speech. One at Little Rock, Arkansas, last Saturday morning, where the citizens broke into the penitentiary and got their man. 3 near Anniston, Alaska, 1 near New Orleans, and 3 at Clarksville, Georgia. The last 3 for killing a white man, and 5 on the same old racket, the new alarm about raping white women. See, it wasn't none back in the day. I'm going to talk to y'all later in one of these videos about Carol Bryant. I'm going to talk to y'all about the white lady that lied on Emmett Till, and I believe she's still alive till this day, and she admitted she lied and she did perjury to say that Emmett Till looked at her, whistled at her, and even grabbed her by the crotch. She lied. And then her husband and the brother came to Emmett Till's house late in the wee hours of the night and knocked on the door, came in the house looking for Emmett, got him up out of bed. And you know the rest of the story from there, what they did to Emmett Till. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to expose it. We're going to talk about how Jet Magazine and Ebony Magazine had to take Mama Till Mobley when she said, take my son and show the world what these people have done to my son. I don't want a closed cabinet. I want an open casket. Show the world what these animals, and they call us beasts. They call us scavengers. They call us savage people. Really? These are the serpent seed of Satan. There was a mutation that took place. There was a mutation in that gene of Japheth. When he went up towards Europe, there was an albinoism. There was blondism. Something happened in the genes because all men at first were melanated or melanated people, but a mutation took place. There's a lot of speculation, even with angel mixing, the fallen angels, tails growing out the back of babies being cut off. I don't know, but one thing I do know, what type of people could do what they did? What type of people could stand there next to bodies that were, you all have not even heard the half of it, of the bodies that were cut, mutilated, burnt with their children, and smile. I'm going to finish this up because I'm going into an hour now. I'm going to have to do another video. All right. I was on the part right here that said on the same old racket, the new alarm about raping white women. Yeah, it was nothing for the white man to say or the white woman to say, oh, this black man raped me. A lot of our black men were lynched and hung on trees because a white man or white woman, all they had to say back then was he raped somebody. And they believed it. There was no jury. There was no law for a black man being killed. That's why it took so long for your president, Joe Biden, to sign an anti-lynching bill into law that do us as a people no good at all. You know why? Because it's for the Democratic vote. It's for you demo dummies out there that keep on voting Democratic. The Democrats started the KKK. The Democrats wanted the KKK. The Democrats wanted all of this junk. So Biden, to appease you black Americans, you Afro-Americans, to make you happy, He just signed into law this bill discriminating, saying there cannot be any more lynching, an anti-lynching law that does us no good anymore because they've already lynched us into the millions. He comes out with this hair bill, hair discrimination law, that employers can't discriminate against your locks, against your dreadlocks, against your afro puffs, against your kinks, and all kind of woolly hair that we have, because they're trying to win the midterm Democratic votes. Biden has been in office for 2 years now. This is midterm elections. Brothers and sisters, I got to almost get ready to cut this short because my phone is dying out. So I'm going to wrap this up right here before my phone dies out, and we're going to have to pick back up on this. So I'm going to finish this real quick here. Let me get into this. My cousin, Pastor Kelly, always says when you get a car started, you can't get it to stop. And that's one thing. When you get me talking and teaching, I go into preaching. So it says here, the same program of hanging, then shooting bullets into the lifeless bodies was carried out to the letter. America is a country in which it was common practice to send the photographs of the lynched and mutilated bodies of blacks in the form of postcards. Often in the photograph, the lynched victim was surrounded by the culprits who carried out the sadistic act. According to George M. Frederickson, it was an enterprising endeavor to take photographs of lynched victims to printing presses and sell instant postcards to the people who attended the lynch party. Two things are obviously clear. First, the Holy Scriptures state that those who have been cursed by God are hanged on trees. Second, African Americans throughout history have been hanged on trees by the droves. Therefore, we can logically conclude that African Americans have been cursed by God, although bearing, and I'm finishing up right here on this note, although bearing this sign alone aids in identification, it does not prove that African Americans are the ancient Israelites. Rather, their identity is proven through an in-depth analysis of the specific curses that God placed on Israel. So you got to follow the signs, the trails, the crumbs that lead to who are the Israelites by the curses that were placed upon them. All right, brothers and sisters, I'm going to have to end this here. I'm going to get into part 4 of the lynching of Yahusha. I'll pick back up with another video. Shalom, all praises to the Most High. Make sure you hit that notification button, like, subscribe, share, and let